Ah, there he is, the man of the hour.
All right. All right, everybody, welcome to the space. Andrew, welcome. It's good to see you here.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you for coming in. This is Asia. We have Ariel and Bryce should be popping in here soon, and we've been following you for a long time. We have a show on the radio called Uninvited, like you and like a lot of people, we're not wokester left, and we're certainly not hard right. And we just have felt like, there's something in the middle that's missing, and we're kind of all desperate for, a better option. So we feel uninvited to the conversation. So that's what our group.
Hence uninvited. I got it.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So if you feel uninvited, you're invited with us. So hence uninvited, exactly. So, Andrew, welcome, and we're so glad you're here. Bryce is here now too. I'm going to kick it over to Bryce.
Oh yeah, great to talk to you, Andrew. Before we get Andrew involved to talk about his background a little bit, we just wanted to give the outline of the room. So we're going to do some panel questions here with Asia, myself, and Ariel, and then after Andrew answers those questions, then we might have a very limited Q&A. I'd point everybody down to the bottom right hand corner where the chat is. You can put any questions or comments in there, and if we have time, we'll read some of the highlights of that. So that's how we're going to do it. So we're not going to have a whole bunch. If you're requesting a mic, you're probably not going to get a chance to talk. We're just going to have to see how it flows. But it's really about the panel questions, and then again, work that chat in the bottom right hand corner. We'll do the best we can to get to you. So Andrew, looking into your background, your career rise really started with your work at Venture for America. Can you talk about the significance of that project, and then any highlights since then that led you to become founder of a major third-party movement?
Oh, thanks, Bryce. It's great to be here. I love this question because I think most people don't realize that I started and ran a nonprofit for 6.5 years, and I think that nonprofit founders would make phenomenal candidates in a lot of different areas and districts. So, my nonprofit Venture for America set out to help train entrepreneurs and grow jobs and companies in Detroit, Cleveland, St. Louis, Birmingham, New Orleans, and a bunch of other cities in the Midwest and the South primarily. And running that organization, I got a firsthand look at the aftermath of the automation of manufacturing jobs in the Midwest, in particular. And then when Trump won, it galvanized me to say, "Hey, I think I can help explain these things to the American people and maybe advance some meaningful solutions." But nonprofit leaders and founders all have similar stories where you get excited about a cause or a need, and then you grind and start an organization to try and address those needs. And typically, even if you're successful, that organization requires like a ton of passion and energy on an ongoing basis. I met a couple of nonprofit founders, and they told me that they were really excited by my run because they sensed that was what eventually led me to it. And I was a little bit unrealistic and naive when I decided to run for president. I thought, well, I raised money for a nonprofit. This will be similar to that. And it turns out that it's dissimilar if you decide to do something political. So there is a little bit of forewarning there for the nonprofit founders listening.
Oh my God, I love that answer. And we really wanted to highlight your background with nonprofits because I think that that's so important with everything you're doing. So I'm glad that you honed in on that. Okay, let's start with the basics. For people that maybe aren't familiar, what's the specific mission of Forward, and do you feel like it's changed at all?
Well, the goal of Forward, the Forward Party, is to make it so that our politicians and our representatives actually care about what's happening to people, families, and communities. It's about restoring a connection between the American people and our leaders. And that connection doesn't really exist right now. Uh, there was a Princeton study that came out a number of years ago that said there's virtually no relationship between public opinion and public policy. So I want everyone to think about that. I mean, you kind of sense that's going on right now. So our goal is to rebuild that connection. We have a very concrete plan on how to do so. It starts by having elected representatives actually have to come back and answer to us when they want re-election. Right now, members of Congress have maybe a 28% approval rate and a 94% reelection rate. And so that when you look at their incentives are pretty much just to keep doing what they've been doing, and they're assured of reelection because, by the way, the two parties have divvied up the country and gerrymandered so furiously that 90% of congressional districts are uncompetitive in the general. So there's like a fake democracy going on right now. Most people are on the outside looking in. And that's what we
Yes.
have to change. That's what the Forward Party is designed to change.
Right. We're all uninvited.
Yeah,
No, that's great.
it's true. And then when you raise your hand and
Thank
say,
you.
"Hey guys, this stuff's messed up," then like that, there's like a whole set of kind of strange moves that the establishment will make around.
Mhm.
Well, the first move, and this is the move that I'm happy to say that Forward is beyond, is like they'll just ignore you. Like that's their first move, is just to pretend you don't exist.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. Um, okay. So that being said, what do you feel has been kind of the biggest challenges with getting a third party with Ford off the ground?
Well, I think third parties have a number of associations and connotations in the public mind that you have to disabuse them of. That there's consistent Ross Perot, Ralph Nader spoiler question that really doesn't apply in the vast majority of the 506,000 races around the country. It's only for the presidential, and so people fast forward to the presidential, and I think that our job has to be to explain, no, no, no. There are thousands of races that we can influence and impact and even win around the country that have nothing to do with the presidential. Like we're not all about every 4 years one race. We're about 506,000 races.
No, that's great. Hey, I wanted to add on a little nugget there. So then the what else has been an issue as far as getting the third party off the ground? Is it messaging? I mean, are you getting a lot of support from the media? Like as far as your messaging goes, what would you like to see done better, or what are you hoping for?
Well, it's funny because uh, the media wants to at this point amplify and augment tribal conflict. And so when you try and explain, look, the problem is this two-sided system that is inflaming and aggravating and not actually leading to any policy solution, that runs contrary to the media's financial interests.
Yeah.
It
Yes.
turns out. So, I've had enough experience, and I wrote about this a lot in my book, where running for president, I was mildly surprised by how uh, uh, tribalized the media is, and how they don't really care about facts or people or accuracy a lot of the time. So the media treatment has been mostly completely off base.
It's a
Um,
dirty game, right?
yeah, and if you're generous, it's like okay, they just don't understand it. But a lot of the times there is like an agenda, and our goal. So the single biggest challenge for not just Forward but any movement in this direction is think about it. How much money would you need to build a credible, viable, durable third part of the United States? How many registrants? How many volunteers? How many votes? I mean, like if you throw a number at any of those things, they're big numbers.
I think
And
if I can
so,
add to that, Ariel, been following you for 2.5 years. I've been following you ever since the presidential, and I saw how they got your name wrong. They messed with your graphics, said there were 20 candidates, didn't even put you in there, and then they said sorry like 25 times in a row without ever changing their behavior.
yeah, and the tough thing when you're a candidate is like you can't bitch and moan about media because it just ends up making things worse.
Yeah.
So
Right.
it's like a game that they've rigged in a particular way. But most Americans don't like the game, don't want the game. They want a way out of the game. And so we have a massive opportunity with Forward. When you look at the numbers that we need, we're off to a roaring start. I mean, we're already the biggest third party in the country by resources and by a couple of other measurements. And that's after either 1 year or 1 month, depending upon when you think we started. So we have a massive opportunity in front of us. But like this is one thing that does piss me off, frankly, is that people like, oh, third parties, like well, one thing they're like, oh, who's funding you, and then you're like, please, someone send us money.
With
you know
that being
like
said,
like they'll act like it's like, oh, you must be corrupt, and it's like, actually, we're trying to do the impossible thing on behalf of the American people. We probably do need $1 gajillion. And so
Right.
instead of being like, oh, like who are like these malevolent people who might be backing you, it's like, maybe we could use like your like $10 from you if you're sick of this
Right. Right. If you're sick of it, yeah, help us out.
stuff.
And
are
I'm
you
sure
are you
there's
are you?
probably.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, that being said, I know everybody asks you that question, but there's probably some, there's a dark underbelly where money is coming from. I mean, concerning any candidate that you look at, you
Well,
know.
and this is one thing I will say is that, like, I'm like a goal oriented guy. So like if I'm going to head down this path, it's like, okay, I have to get some resources in. So
Hmm.
so we have raised millions of dollars. Most of it, I'm happy to say, from everyday Americans sending us $10-20 because they know things are broken and they want to make them better. Uh, but everything we do is publicly reported, so there's nothing like shady going on. There's something of this, like we're trying to do something that the American people know we need. It's very difficult. We need a lot of stuff. We're making progress every day. And I think people are so beaten down by negativity at this point that like that they take a jaundiced eye to everything, which on some level I get. But like this would be like the dumbest way to be corrupt that you can think of, because we don't actually control anything. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like
Right.
if
Yeah.
like
Right.
if you wanted to be corrupt, like there are two major
Yeah,
parties
yeah,
that traffic in
exactly.
it pretty regularly.
Andrew, along
Right.
those lines, are you surprised by any of the reactions you've received since you announced the Forward Party's creation?
Yeah, it's that there are a lot of people, and this is one of the problems in American life right now, is that there are a lot of people who be like, oh, the problem, and be like, okay, here's a solution. And then they'd be like, oh, no, no, can't actually do the solution. you know?
Right.
I mean, I can't tell you how many books I've read that run like that. They, spend 200 pages like getting you animated about a problem, and then the solutions like this namby-pamby, like maybe we should do this, but who the heck knows?
Yeah, that's really frustrating. Before we get on to Ariel's next main question, I just wanted to make sure I understood that. So it's absolutely true that you need funding. This is just a reality of the campaigns, right?
Of
So
course.
okay, so then how did you? So you're just going to have a high level of transparency with your large donors and things for those people who would be naysayers. How are you going to approach that differently than
Yeah,
how it's
again,
done?
it's all publicly disclosed. And our donors are really wholesome. I mean, most of them are just everyday Americans giving us small dollars. To the extent that we have bigger donors, I'm grateful. And and it's actually an act of courage and principle on their part, because they're publicly disclosed. And then who's out to get them? The establishment and the major parties.
Yeah,
So I
right.
want you to think about the person who'll even like pony up real money, because like virtually everyone has interests that are threatened by a bad relationship with one of the two major parties.
Can
Absolutely true.
that, that's a good question. Can large funders donate anonymously?
At present, they cannot.
Oh, okay. That probably hurts to say that. I'm sorry. That's probably a painful question. Um, okay. What do you feel like gives the Ford Party staying power and legs where other attempts for a third has failed in the past?
There are a lot of things. I mean, number one, the appetite is higher than it's been in a generation. 62% of Americans want a third party to succeed. 50% of Americans say they're independents at this point. And maybe the most compelling thing is every day I am anywhere public, random people will just come up to me and say like, keep going, keep fighting, love you. Like, like people, ordinary people get it. Ordinary people are just like, please, like
Yeah.
help break us out of this
Yes.
this
This
mess.
whole, yeah.
Yeah, this hole. And so that energy is going to be there. And the average American is not a political activist. The average American doesn't understand all the weird mechanics and like the forces that are going to try and keep us in place. But if they get presented an option, they'll take it. And so what we have to do is roll up our sleeves and do the hard work of getting ballot access in different states, of supporting local candidates, of occasionally having like a high profile race where we can make a difference. And every step we take, more and more people will be like, oh, they're still here. They're still doing stuff. They're like doing stuff that actually has reached my community now. Like I'm into it. That vein of support is so massive. It's like
Hmm.
tens of millions of Americans that it's like that. Now again, most of them aren't gonna like spend all their free time canvassing for Forward or anything like that. Though we are going to be endorsing candidates this week, and we're sending people around the country to different areas
Hmm.
to door knock and canvass. So I'm heading to Utah next weekend as one example. So if it is appealing to you, please do go to forwardparty.com, and the endorsement should come out Tuesday or Wednesday of this week. But most Americans are not going to be that animated and energized. So, like our goal is just to try and get an option in front of them. And if we do that, though, they'll take it because they really don't love their current options.
No, that's absolutely true. I mean, I would say former Republican voter who's been an independent for years, and I want to just reassure you, there is a thirst out there for another option. The data, the empirical data says so, right? So when I always laugh when people say, "Oh, this isn't the time. This isn't the time," I would think this is the time. Is there ever been a time in history where we've had these things line up? I think this is absolutely the time. So I encourage you to keep going. So then further, it's going to take time, right, to get everything with Forward in place. Is that what you mean when you say it's more of it's a marathon instead of a sprint? Like, what are kind of the milestones? What are we looking forward to in the next couple years, several years? How is
I
this
see
going to
what you
come
did
to
there,
fruition?
Bryce.
Yeah, so we have some very very immediate goals. Again, we're going to be endorsing let's say approximately um, you know 30 candidates or something along those lines. This week, and we want to help them win. And we think we can help them win. And some of them are very important races. We want to get ballot access or recognition in 15 states by the end of this year, which in some cases requires a lot of signature gathering and elbow grease. We want to get up to 30 states by next year. Believe it or not, there are some races in 2023 locally in various places that we're going to be involved in. And then 2024, there could be some incredible opportunities. Heck, there could be some opportunities this cycle where we influence the balance of power in the U.S. Senate, as one example. So we're balancing trying to make things happen right now, as in this November, and aggregating, let's say, hundreds or even thousands of local officials having this national convention next year. Also knowing that this is going to be a multi-cycle game. One of the biggest beefs I have with other people who have come into this space is that they haven't stuck around. Like Ross Perot runs in 92 and gets 19% of the vote or so, and then doesn't really build a reform party over multiple cycles. Uh, there are other people, Howard Schultz comes to mind, who started to move in this direction and then didn't actually grind it out. So we're going to grind it out. And this is one beef I have is that people have cast the Forward Party as Andrew Yang's like stealth presidential run for 2024. It's actually the opposite of that,
Hmm.
where this is like the multi-cycle institution building, grassroots oriented. Let's actually do the hard work in the plumbing.
Right.
And that's actually more the way I'm wired anyway, as like a builder and operator. And I wish that some of the people that had identified this need in past cycles had decided to do the same thing, the same approach over multiple cycles.
And in that way, I think you're the only one. Like you said, Ross Perot, he kind of came in, came in with a bang and then headed out. For the multi-cycle element of it, I think you really are the only
And
one. That's a really good point.
yeah, sure. And in the purest way, like it's not about your ego or how can I get people to look at me. It's about things are broken. And along those lines, it's like, Andrew, what motivates you when you get up in the morning? And has that motivation changed in the last 5 years, from the presidential to the mayoral to what you're doing now?
So in 2016, when Trump won, I thought, okay, the country's slipping away and going dark and dysfunctional faster than I could have imagined. Like, let me try and do something to help. So I run for president on universal basic income, try and mainstream that idea, largely succeed, but am still left with this sinking feeling that we're heading to disaster, and identify that the best thing we can do to avert disaster is to try and modernize and revamp and upgrade our democratic system so we don't have this strange dysfunctional two-party system that polarizes us, pits us against each other, puts our people and families and communities on the distant back burner so that our quality of life just continues to go down and people are getting more restive and angry and don't understand why. So when people talk about running for office and this and that, I genuinely think the highest use, the highest impact I could have is to fix these crumbling institutions so that they work more the way Americans imagine that they work, where like you have to actually make 51% of us like you and be happy in order to win re-election, as opposed to the 10% of the most rabid hyper partisans on one side or the other that don't correspond to most of us. And
let me just wrap. Oh, sorry.
but that task is more important than any office or office holder, in my opinion. And so, like, if I can accomplish that, then I'm golden. You know what I mean? Then we need a system where like good people can actually make a real difference, and you're rewarded for being good, and not the opposite.
Yes. You know what? I have a quick question I wanted to ask you. We see all of the threads of not so nice talk and things like that. Bryce and Errol and I are just kind of seeing little dibbles of that, with kind of the hate speech. Do you just ignore it? How do you personally deal with that?
Yeah, I mean, for me, we're trying to build a forward party and build a positive unifying movement. And as long as you're attracting your people, you're fine.
Yeah.
I mean, we're in an environment where, particularly now with the polarization, where there are going to be people who, frankly, aren't that reasonable,
Right.
and,
Right.
and who are rewarded for inciting negative energy on social media or otherwise.
Right.
And so you just have to expect that they're going to be there at the margins, but they don't represent the vast majority of Americans who just want something better. So when you ask, like, is the right approach generally ignoring it? It's like I typically do ignore it, because you have to remember it's like a sliver of a sliver of a sliver of people, and some of them aren't even real people, to be honest.
Right. That's true. That's a really good point. If it troubles you, just assume that they're a bot. Assume they're not a human being.
You just got to ignore the haters, right? It just comes with the dinner, right, Andrew? I mean, you just have to expect anything you're going to do that's transformational is going to get a lot of resistance, at least up front. So, yeah, that's the way that we look at it.
The room shouldn't be going to these people, in my opinion. It's like the media just chooses, I'm going to give oxygen here, I'm going to give oxygen there. You always want to give oxygen to the people thumping their chest and screaming, but you never want to give oxygen to people like us, hence the uninvited title. I just had that on my mind.
Thanks, Ariel. Yeah, with that, Andrew, I want to make sure that we're being cognizant of your time, and I think we have 7 to 8 more minutes. And so let's go to Mr. Paul J. Sisler is in the room, and I know he had a question for you.
Hello, Andrew. Oh my God, this has been a long time coming and all that. You are a mentor and an inspiration, so much so that I published a book, and I had to go back before I published it and rewrite part of it. And one subchapter is titled Andrew Yang. My question to you is, during your campaign, you talked about the cyber industrial revolution and what was coming. And Elon Musk just had an AI day where he introduced his prototype for Tesla's humanoid robot Optimus, and says that within 3 to 5 years, it's going to be available to the public at about 20 grand a robot, less than a car. So the impact on the labor force is something that you actually talked about when you ran for president. And now that this is coming, this is here, it's 3 to 5 years away. What is your outlook, and what do you have proposed to help people along with this?
Well, thanks, Paul. Yeah, I obviously saw the latest demo, and COVID has accelerated my concerns about automation, where half of companies said that they're investing more in automating their processes, and consumers at this point are much more excited about not dealing with a person than they were even, pre-COVID. So my solutions are very similar to what I said on the presidential, where I think we need an economy that revolves around human well-being. I think uh, putting economic resource into people's hands, to me, is like, is still an inevitability. A lot of what I'm doing with Forward is trying to make it so that big solutions actually are on the table and possible, by making calls with people that might disagree about particular solutions, but can agree on the fundamental structural problems. So I'm deeply concerned about how AI is speeding up. A lot of it is going to end up eating up design and creativity jobs much more than most people realize. I don't know if you read the recent Atlantic article where the author Stephen Marsh had AI write part of the article for him. You might want to check that out because it was pretty freaky.
God, that was bizarre, wasn't it?
And the AI art that makes AI art, you can just type in what kind of art you want, and it just like makes it for you, and it's all rendered. That was something else.
And it's pretty good. Like you look at the AI art and you're like, well, this is a hell of a lot better than I could do. So so that these things are speeding up, and they're speeding up in a way that's not even linear. We're as
Right.
unprepared for it as we ever were. I'm just now convinced that our current political system will never address this or other core issues, and so that's what the current task is.
Yeah,
I just
that's
want to outline in the room here real quick. Yeah, that we're again limited time here, so there's a lot of people who want to come up and talk. We probably won't have time for that. I suggest you put any comments in the chat. And I wanted actually to bring up there's a good chat question in there from Radical Centrist, and he outlines Andrew, as part of the platform, right? Like, what does Forward stand for? And I know this is a little confusing for a lot of people. Could you touch on your approach for where your stances are? I think people get confused there. To me, it's something that's evolving, right? It's grassroots. It's coming through your localities to the state, and then you'll have federal positions. Am I describing that correctly?
Yeah, the three pillars to Forward Party's policy approaches are free people, thriving communities, and a vibrant democracy. And I want you all to reflect on those three things and think about how far we are from them.
yeah.
Where people certainly don't feel free, communities are barely surviving, not thriving, and our democracy feels like this creaking monstrosity that's just like barely clinging to life. So we do want to have our grassroots volunteers and leaders and state leads guide us on policies in their community. We want to be able to have a positive impact in both Mississippi and Massachusetts. And to be able to do those two things, you don't want to dictate policy in a way that's not principles and values based. So I'm pumped about this national convention that's coming up because I'm sure we will coalesce around some very, very big recommendations. But the single biggest thing, and I know like that this most of the people here understand this, is that people drive the policy. And right now, we both have the wrong people and the wrong incentives for those people. So it seems boring and wonky just to be like ranked choice voting, nonpartisan open primaries, but that's actually going to be more important than than any policy that we put on the map. Because right now, if I advocate for a policy without those structural reforms, I'm probably like wasting everyone's time.
Oh,
Yeah,
good point. Good point.
good
Yeah,
point.
the reform has to be in place for your vision to take hold, right? Is
Yeah,
that
and
it?
there are different reasons for people to embrace the reform. And so you want to lead with the thing that makes things possible and can also broaden out to as large a group of people as you need.
That's an important point too. That some of these things have just become buzzwords, like ranked choice voting. Without people really stopping and understanding why that's necessary, why it's so important.
Yeah, like I'm a systems and incentives guy, and so if you have incentives where my job is to please the donor class and the 10% of the most extreme folks in my district, and then I win my job back forever, maybe I'll do those things. You know what I mean? And then if you change the system where, hey, my job now is to make 51% of people think their lives are getting better, maybe I'll do that. And we shouldn't expect politicians to go violently against their own interests. Like the only way out of this is to change their interests so that they line up with ours.
It's kind of like having your like protein before you have dessert, like the ranked choice voting, the primaries of the protein, and then the dessert is like actually getting the change.
Yeah, and the change can mean different things for different people in different places. It is exciting because people are figuring it out. Like there's like a higher level of sophistication. And this group, I love the idea of the uninvited. One of the jokes I tell, but it's totally true, is that we're building a tribe of people who are sophisticated enough to understand that the media orgs are like trying to separate us into tribes. You know what I
Right.
mean? It's like we're like our own tribe of people who get it, and are tired of being manipulated.
Yeah, no.
1000%. And thank you so much for your kind words about uninvited. Um, okay, this is kind of a big question, but I know we probably only have you for a couple more minutes, and everyone in the room, if you want to stay on. Unfortunately, when Andrew, if he has to skip off, we're going to be doing a Q&A for as long as everybody is willing to hang out. So Andrew, let's say, things shape up over the next several years and you do become president. What is your what is life after? Do you want to stay in public service forever?
Wow. I mean, this is like a very deep question. Well, I just want to try and help as many people as I can, and do as much good as I can. I will say this is going to be kind of funny. Whatever. I will say it depresses me that it seems like the Obamas have become media producers. I feel like there should
Mm,
be something better.
Ditto.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So there was an American tradition of like former presidents peace out and like go to the woods, and like that was cool. I get that they don't want to like stomp on, like their successors, like vibe and independence and whatnot. I will say that I also am a big believer that we should make way for the next generation. I think the gerontocracy in American life is out of control, and I have considered making a pledge at some point saying like, hey, if I'm still crowding the stage when I'm 75, someone tell me to get the fuck off, and you can like use this quote and like just say like that, so I'm very so that there is that. I'd love there to be term limits, because I think it's positive for certainly our political leadership to get refreshed and rejuvenated. The fact that the two major candidates will have a combined age of 159 next year or
Yeah.
2024, is just it's like a really sad emblem of what's gone on with our institutions and our politics. And I was asked this week about like why our leaders don't seem to have the right approach to technology, and I was like, most of them don't understand it. It's like irrelevant to them, you know.
Right.
Like the average senator is 64, and which means the average like leadership position holder is 70 plus.
And before you do go, Andrew, I just wanted to say, hey, I really appreciate, and I know Asya and Ariel do too, is how you just talk to anybody. You're results driven. I mean, we think of ourselves as critical thinkers, right? You got to look at the best case argument against your position, and you'll go and talk to anybody. I mean, you're on Fox, you're on CNN, you're on Joe Rogan. I mean, you're just trying to reach out to where the people are and then talk about brass tacks, talk about outcomes, right? So I just want to say, hey, I really appreciate that because nobody else does that. And so we went back and looked at some of your interviews, and they're really good. And it's just, I think that's the common man. The common man just wants good outcomes for himself, for his family, for his community. And we're just lost in this wash of, the social this, social that, the culture wars. It's just nonsense. So I think there really is an energy out there. And I know you're the people in your camp have signaled that to you too. But I just want to reinforce that I appreciate that for sure. So keep doing that.
Thanks, Bryce. Appreciate you all as well. Hope everyone supports Uninvited. It's it's an awesome group or channel, and I was really touched when I was running that a woman said. So she was a Trump voter, but then she said, "Hey, if I don't vote for Trump, I'm going to vote for Yang." And then the person was really surprised and was like, "Yang, why?" And then she said, "He's the only one who doesn't seem like he's judging me." And I think that's what a lot of Americans want at this point. Like they just want to feel like they can be themselves and be part of something and be loved and respected. And we're just not giving enough Americans that sense of respect and appreciation. If we can restore that, I think we have a chance to change the direction of this country.
There it is.
That was so on point, and that respect and love that you just talked about, that was the same feeling where I felt like, when I was marching and participating in all those things when you were being president, there was no negativity, there was no anger. It was just like, let's all get together, enjoy each other's company, and try to actually fix what's broken. So thanks.
Still working on it, everyone. Appreciate the heck out of you. Hope you have a wonderful weekend. And please do stick around. I know a lot of the people who are actually here, so this is going to be a great group.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thanks a lot, Andrew.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Have a great weekend.
Have a great